welcome to the Bits and Bibles podcast, Episode 4, Getting a Digital Suite. I'm your host, Zachariah Collins, and on today's episode, we're going to be discussing a little bit of a different part of what you need as part of a nonprofit or a ministry. You know, a lot of what we're going to cover faces outward, faces towards your clients, faces towards your customers, faces towards your supporters, whatever. But this one faces internal. And if any of you guys aren't familiar as much with the term of a suite, some of you probably are thinking of like a room or something. In this case, we're going to be talking, when I say a digital suite, I don't mean a digital office space. Well, I guess I kind of do, but I don't mean offices in a building. I mean as in a suite of tools for managing documents and files. When you have a nonprofit, there's a good chance you have a team, and a team can either run unorganized with each person using different tools and technologies, and you try to piece it together, or they can be on a unified platform and run together, organized. And the thing about it is that a lot of these tools I'm about to mention are either free, almost free, or very inexpensive if you're a nonprofit. Now, I want to caveat everything I'm about to say with one thing. This is if you have your 501c3. If you do not have a 501c3, none of these licensing things I'm about to explain apply. You have to have 501c3 status to get this. And I don't know about other countries. I'm at least speaking specifically for the United States. I don't know quite all the other rules that apply to different countries and stuff. What I'm speaking for is here in the United States. So I want to talk about three main platforms. There's other document management platforms out there. There's an extensive list really, but I want to talk about three main ones I picked, and because I believe they're at least the first two are some of the biggest players, and this third one I kind of picked to just be a free, like this is completely free, like the probably least expensive option you can go with, but it misses a lot of stuff. But I wanted to give it as like a comparison. So, in comparison, the three platforms we're going to be discussing today are Google Workspace, also formerly known as G Suite, Office 365, and LibreOffice. So, let's start with a little bit about what each one is. So, Google Workspace, obviously created by Google, is a mostly cloud-facing set of tools that Google built their platform around the idea of based in web browsers. Office 365, probably the one that you guys are most familiar with, Excel, Word, PowerPoint, etc., is built around application first, on-prem first. When Microsoft started creating this was back before the days of cloud-based anything, really. And then the last one is LibreOffice. It is an open source project. It is on-prem only. They do not have a cloud version that I am aware of, at least. But it is completely free. There is no cost that I could find when I was doing my research on this. So let's break down a little bit of the tools that are available. In Google Workspace, you have Gmail for email, Docs for word processing, Sheets for spreadsheets, Slides for slideshow, Drive for file storage and file server, a tool called Currents, which is a kind of an intranet and interconnectivity tool, and then Chat for communication. Alternatively, on the Office 365 platform, you have Outlook for email, Word for word processing, Excel for spreadsheets, PowerPoint for slideshows, OneDrive for personal file storage, SharePoint for cloud file server and intranet, Teams for communication across multiple platforms. Now, if any of you are familiar with these tools, you might be saying, like, well, Zach, Teams lets you store files. Yes, it uses SharePoint on the back end. So those are our first two. The last one is LibreOffice, which again is completely free. You don't pay anything for it, but there's some things you're going to find that it doesn't have. So, for example, for email, it's got nothing. It doesn't have an Outlook. It doesn't have a Gmail. It offers nothing in that area. It uses Writer for word processing, a tool called Calc for spreadsheet, Impress for slideshow. It has no way of doing file storage. It has no way of doing cloud file storage, file server. Has none of that. Has no intranet tool offering, and no communication. Because again, it's just a set of Office. It is just literally back to a basic set of document editing tools. So let's discuss a little bit about the mindset behind these three tools and kind of their costing and different things like that. So, for example, all this, again, one more time before we go through this, all of this is being based on you being approved, you having your 501c3, and then being approved by this platform for their nonprofit program. So, Google Workspace, let's start with cost. That's the question everyone has. So, Google Workspace has three categories in cost: free, $3 a month, and $5 a month, based on what you get. Each level of that gives you a little bit more tooling. But their basic Google Workspace for nonprofits, which will get you all the basic tools and everything we just listed there for the most part, is free. Then they have one tier up that is $3, which adds some more tools and features, and then another one that's $5. Now, to explain, it's usually, I think, 5, 10, and 12 for their normal price, so that's, you're getting, and this is I should clarify, this is per user. All these are going to be per user per month, so don't go, $3 for my whole team. No. It's $3 per user per month. So if you have one person, you, for $3 per month for a year, that's $36. From there, start adding the rest of your team. So, I mean, there is a cost for some of the nicer features, but it's a reduced one because you're paying $3 instead of $10, or you're paying nothing instead of $5, just depending on the costings. And, of course, with recent inflation and all that, when you look at this, when you're listening to this is as of today of the recording. Don't take that as, this isn't even as of the day of the posting of this episode. This is as the day of recording it. These prices may adjust, but that's the basics that I have from the research I did on it. The next step up is is Office 365. Again, probably the most well-known suite of tools out there. Excel and Word and all of that has been around for a very long time. In fact, I recently saw, I can't remember when it was dated, I saw an ad for Microsoft Excel. I want to say it was mid-80s. I don't know. Some of you might know this ad. I'll give you a quick description of it. It was a couple of guys in an elevator going up to the top floor for like a meeting with their boss, and they hadn't had some kind of report ready, and so the guy shows how you can generate this report with Microsoft Excel and do all these things, which I have to laugh sitting here going, when you look at it, you're like, wow, it looks clunky. Two things: one, it looks clunky, and two, it hasn't really changed that much in all this time, it feels like. But there was this whole little commercial on that. But this is probably the most well-known A, set of tools out there, but B, your team probably all knows how to use this. Or at least most of them know how to use it, because, again, it's been around so long that everybody at some point has used Word, probably. At some point. But, their pricing offerings kind of work as such. So, you have Office 365 Business Basic. The nonprofit pricing is 300 free licenses. So, up to 300 people, it's free of Business Basic. Or you have Microsoft Office 365 Business Standard at $3, which, by the way, is a really good deal for the Office suite, because I believe last I checked, it as well was like $10 or $12 for Standard. Yeah, I think that's what it was, like $10 or $12 for Standard per user per month. So $3, that's not shabby. And then you'll notice Microsoft and Google kind of, again, playing off each other a little bit. You have the free 3 and 5. Office 365 Business Premium. Now, here's what's interesting about what Microsoft does for Business Premium, which offers quite a bit of tooling, by the way. They offer 10 free users of Premium, their top, Office 365 Business Premium. Now, that is not their top licensing across the board. Just of these three, that's the top. They offer 10 free ones, and then it's $5 after that. So, good example is, and you can pull on all these licenses within one Office environment. So, for example, you might have, let's say you have a team, and you have 2 people that really need to utilize the entire weight of the Office 365 suite. And you have 5 people that don't. Maybe they just need the basics. You might give 2 licenses of Business Premium to keep yourself, of your 10 free ones, to those 2 people, and give 5 the other 5 people, Business Basic licenses. Here's a good example of the differences. Business Premium allows you to do installation of the Office suite to your computer. Business Basic is cloud only, so you have to use Word Online, Excel Online, all of that. So varying, depending on what the person needs, depends on what you might use it for. But those are kind of the breakdown. Now, LibreOffice, in comparison, is free. There is no price. There is no cost. It is community. It is open source. You just have it. But again, with that, you're going to see some differences in features as well that you wouldn't have seen that are usually available with these other suites. For example, mobile apps. Microsoft and G Suite both offer a full slew of their mobile apps to go. So, that can always come in handy, especially when, in this mobile environment we live in, it's not uncommon that you're kind of working just when you have time or when you're on the go, especially if you're starting up something. You might work all kinds of weird hours or have an idea to, you might be out and about and have an idea for something and want to write it down. Right there, you can pull out Word, you can pull out Docs, you can write it down, and you can hit save, and it saves it back up to your Office 365 or Google Workspace environment. So I looked into it for Libre. To my surprise, they actually do have LibreOffice, the organization, because I believe I can't remember what the organization is called, but there is another team that they worked with that made mobile apps for them. So it's a partnership of some kind that I guess the original people didn't make mobile apps, but then they partnered with somebody that did. So technically, they've got mobile apps. But again, you're just saving it right there to your phone as far as I understand. It doesn't save to anywhere on the cloud. I've never used them, so, if someone gets in there and uses them and finds it otherwise, awesome. But to my knowledge, you don't have any way of, there isn't a OneDrive or a Google Drive or anything or SharePoint that you could save to. Real-time collaboration. Now, this is something that's become more of a thing in recent years, especially as COVID became a thing and stuff like that. Real-time collaboration is simply the ability to have two or more concurrent people editing a document. So, for example, let's say I am here in the United States, and I've got somebody in Europe I'm working with, right? And we're looking at a Google Sheet or a Microsoft Excel sheet online together. When you're working in that document together, you actually see a cursor that moves around, showing what the other person is doing in real time. Now, I'm going to caveat this. This is for Google Sheets and Excel Online. It has to be the online version. But either way, that gives you an ability to see multiple people at the same time working in a document, and you can actually see what the other is doing, which is an amazing feature for collaboration. Now, as I mentioned, LibreOffice, while completely free, is going to be missing features. Here's one of them. There's no cloud offering because there's no cloud backbone for LibreOffice that I am aware of. So real-time collaboration is not a thing. If you want to collaborate with somebody, you open up the document, you make your changes, you email it to them, which, if any of you have ever done this, very quickly becomes super clunky. You can do it. I don't advise it. I don't recommend it. I don't any of it, especially when these other tools are free. If you're needing to collaborate with people a lot, Office 365 and G Suite are the route to go of these three. Communication tools. For Google, there is Chat and Currents for your team. Currents being more internal, from what I've understood. I have not gotten to play with Currents much. Currents being more for an internal communication, and Chats being both internal and external communication. You can use it to chat with other people that have Google Workspaces or G Suite environments. Teams is internal, and there are ways you can make it external, but typically it's meant for internal communication. Both these tools, though, are great. In my current work environment, we use Teams, and it's a really, really solid tool for managing communication between your teams, keeping everybody on the same board. As a lot of people, if some of you have already used Teams before, as you know, you can send documents and have documents saved inside of your Teams channels, which is a really handy tool. You can integrate, and this also, I believe, stands for Google Contacts or Google Chat. You can integrate third-party apps to discuss, to pull information into Teams and stuff like that. So there's a lot. They're both really powerful tools. I actually have started favoring Teams over Google Chat, even though I really also do like the Google Suite, the Google Workspace environment. So, but Microsoft has really done something well, surprisingly, for Teams. They really did a really solid job and what they've done with making Teams. And of course, LibreOffice doesn't offer anything because they don't have any infrastructure for a communications platform. Video platform. You're a nonprofit, you're a ministry, you might actually want to put a video out there and let people see what you're doing. YouTube and Stream are Google and Microsoft's offerings. Now, everyone knows YouTube. Like, pretty much YouTube at this point is not only a noun, it's a verb too. And, you go to YouTube it. It's a verb now. And Stream, little less known, but it is a video platform that the Office 365 suite offers. I've worked with it. It's not bad. Not quite as feature-rich as YouTube, but if you're needing to share videos, it is definitely another way to do it. And, of course, LibreOffice doesn't have an offering for that as well.
Now, every product, regardless of how good it is always going to end up having some moment that the software just messes up. And you've got to get tech support involved. Now, sometimes tech support can be a tech person or a hire, but there's also tech support that's based from within the company. Both Microsoft Office 365 and Google Workspace have tech support options where their techs you can reach out to their techs for support. The good news is that both have portals built into their platforms that allow you to do that. As for LibreOffice, again, being that it's free, the support is community-based. So they have communities that you can join and then ask your question, and the community works on it kind of as a whole, but that also means A, you don't have dedicated teams working on it, B, it's as the community has time, and C, its mileage may vary on who you get. There won't be the same standardization that comes with a paid support team, but it does offer one. It's just, again, I don't have anything against community tech supports. I actually am a part of a lot of different tech communities, and I think they're great. It's just that it does come with some different pros and cons versus a paid on-staff tech support for a software company. That being said, I can think of at least one software at my current job that one of our clients use that it is just rather awful, and half the time I get a better answer from the community than I do the actual tech support team. So again, not to knock community tech support, because it definitely has its place in the tech world, and sometimes again you'll even get better answers. Third-party integrations. So one thing that is important is we're getting to be a very more interconnected world, and sometimes you need things to work across multiple platforms. For example, you might be using a different tool than SharePoint for storing documents. Maybe you have certain documents you store in a different place, but you'd still like to integrate that with your environment. Let's say you have a Dropbox or a Slack team or something. I'm trying to kind of think of this. I didn't prep any particular tool, but I have a third-party integration. And those third-party integrations can be a huge time saver when you can just tie two softwares together instead of having to pull data out of one, move it over manually, and put it in the other. Both Office 365 and Google Workspace offer a rather large collection of integrations with other third-party apps. To my knowledge, and if someone knows otherwise, feel free to let me know. To my knowledge, LibreOffice does not offer that. Again, it's a very simple tool set. It's really just meant to be you on your workstation kind of a thing. It's not for large-scale collaboration or multi-platform collaboration. It's kind of just you at your desktop kind of a thing. Now, here's one that's interesting, and this is not featured in at least, I think, the first two tiers of both suites offerings, and very much not offered in Libre. Not even on the radar, is device management. Now, this is getting a little bit away from a digital suite standpoint, but I wanted to include it because it's still a point that you may have to come to work with at some point, is that you're going to have devices, and you're going to want, as your company grows, those devices to have good management to them. And probably in a couple of different later episodes, we'll cover things like mobile device management, unified endpoint management, and device security, things like that. So, but I just wanted to hit on this point a little bit here, was that you might want to look too at what offerings they have for device management. For example, G Suite has an offering through Chrome Enterprise. So if you're a company that decides you're going to do mostly Chromebooks in a very cloud environment, very lightweight cloud environment, and you can pick up some nice Chromebooks these days, it might be worth you getting the G Suite platform, because then you have an easy way to control and manage your Chromebooks. If you're looking for a little more of a multi-device management system, you might be looking at a third party outside of one of these suites, like maybe Workspace 1 or something like that. If you're looking in the Microsoft world, Office 365 has started adding endpoint management. Started offering endpoint management. And, of course, there's SCCM, which is a little more of a on-prem, larger scale. So I don't really include it in this, but it is another offering out there. But that device management can be huge, especially as it grows, from kind of a single pane of glass, make sure your devices are safe and secure. You can deploy apps, you can do all kinds of stuff, but it's a good thing to at least know about when you're getting into this, is that think ahead of like maybe what kind of devices do you use? Do you use predominantly Windows devices? Do you use Macs? Do you use Chrome-based devices? Is it a mix of all three? It just kind of depends. But it's good to take a minute, at least think about that, and try to, as best you can, think ahead a little bit and go, what do I think we're going to use in the future? Another important piece is having a platform security suite. So Office 365 and G Suite, or Google Workspace, both offer platform security. Now, the important piece of security in that sense is you've got to think about all your important information is being stored here, whether it's accounting files, whether it's drawings of plans you do if you're if you're a nonprofit that works in maybe some kind of construction, like maybe you build things for people. You might have blueprints or plans, or maybe clients' personal information. You want to make sure that all that data is secure, because the one thing that can absolutely mess up your company is a breach of data. You lose trust, your data loses its integrity. You start losing a lot of things when your platform becomes unsecure. So one thing to think about as well when you're thinking about this is you want to look for a platform, and this goes for any software really, but you want to look for a platform with good security features on it. Both Microsoft Office 365 and Google Workspace offer different levels of security and tools with their platform depending on what license you get. So that's something to pay attention to. If you're in a more high secure environment, you might actually step up from one of their completely free licenses to getting a few people, maybe a few core key people, an actual paid for license. Now you're still getting it heavily discounted, but a paid for license, because the information they handle is confidential enough that it's worth the extra little bit of money every month to make sure they're extra secure. Now, as you've seen, there's a lot of differences between these tools, but there's also a lot of similarities. At the end of the day, I've managed both Office 365 and Google Workspace environments. Both have their pluses and their minuses. Both are very powerful tools. I don't know if I could say a favorite, because it kind of depends on the day and what problem I'm running into with that tool that day. But, a couple of thoughts about it. Their primary designs between the two. I'm going to kind of narrow this real quick down to Google Workspace and Office 365 for a minute, because these are the two that really come down to when it comes to like design and stuff. I really want to focus on. But I will say this at least, and I'll include Libre for this first part. Google Workspace was designed with cloud first. So an in-browser experience. You open your web browser, you go to a web address, and from there you access Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, whatever, but you're doing it all within the space of a browser. You don't install anything. There's no programs on your computer, so you can run it on very small, lightweight equipment. Office 365 was originally built application first. As you know, Office 365 has been around for a very long time, comparatively. And it was really built with that concept in mind, that we're going to have these applications that you install that have all these features and da-da-da. While, again, very good. I think Excel was a very, I've used Excel a lot, and I think it's a good program for the most part. It definitely, when you look at it to sheets, they were built with two different mindsets. Now, here's what's interesting. I've worked with accounting teams on this before. In fact, at my last job, I remember working with some of our accountants, and the idea of going to Google Sheets for them was quite a jump. But both the tools have a lot of strength to them. And they both can pretty much do the same thing. But as with Google Workspace, there's less buttons per se, and a little more coding that you have to do, or not coding even, but some of the stuff you have to write out a little more in the scripting form. Whereas sometimes Office 365, well, at least the installed version, is it has much more of where you can click something and it will do it all for you, button thing. So that's the big thing there, is that Microsoft or Google was cloud first. Office 365 was kind of cloud second, in browser second. That wasn't the original way they did it. And for LibreOffice, at least, it was their target audience is someone who just needs a free, simple, basic set of document editing tools, and not email, not intercommunication, none of the other stuff, just document editing. The interesting part is the target platform here between Google Workspace and Office 365. Google Workspace was built to be light, flexible, and mobile, whereas Office 365 is application function heavy, like I said, those buttons and stuff. It was built with the concept of, it was the original, probably most known tool for that. Most people will call I know a lot of people that will call a spreadsheet an Excel sheet. It's kind of like the term Ziploc. The Ziplocs the brand, and it's an item, but now it's just what's used as the term for everything that's like that. So both the platforms have all three of the platforms have their advantages and disadvantages, and even between the two big guys, there's advantages and disadvantages. So take a few minutes, go to, ironically enough, YouTube. Go to YouTube, look up some videos, watch some videos by other people comparing the two platforms, or comparing all three, and again, this goes back to, if you don't have an IT person, I'm going to help try to point you in the right direction, and I hope to make more content in the future. But do a little bit of your own research. Get other people's opinions. There's a lot of people out there who have reviewed these products and give their pros and their cons. And think about the future of your company, and are you going to be more Chromebooks and mobile devices? Are you going to be more laptops, Windows laptops and desktops? Depending on your answer on that, then that means which suite should you go with? Is there a feature you find on one that you really want that the other doesn't have? Things like that. So really take your time and do some research on that. One thing I want to discuss here really quick, and I forgot to bring this up. Anytime you're watching or listening to one of my podcasts, make sure to check out the description. In the description, I will put links to things that I mentioned here in the podcast. Sometimes if I forget to mention something in one of the episodes, I might still go ahead and put a link for it in the description. So go ahead and always check down there in the description for the links and links to resources and tools and stuff that I mentioned here in the podcast. I want, again, to try to just help people navigate and learn how to work in this space known as technology. Now, this last piece I want to run through is how to get on one of these platforms. So again, very high level here for a second, but here's a few things that you're going to need. One, you need to go through the process of being a 501c3. Both these platforms require that you are a 501c3, at least for the U.S., at least for those of us based here in the United States, that you are a 501c3. Once you've done that, you will go to either google.com/nonprofits or microsoft.com/ because I'm in the States, en-us/ Microsoft-365 /nonprofit. I know that was a long URL. There might be a shorter one. That was the one I pulled really quickly. The other thing you can do is literally just go to Google or Bing search and just type in Google for nonprofit or Microsoft for nonprofit. You'll get there either way. Once you've got through one of those, you're going to go through their verification process. Usually, I think it takes about a week or two start to finish. It really depends on how simple and how quickly you get the information they need to them, and how quickly they can look your ministry up and do the research they need for verification. Once that, they use, actually, I believe both services use something called TechSoup, which I want to cover in another video later, but it is another good resource for nonprofits when it comes to getting hardware and software. They offer discounts and stuff. Now, again, this is not a paid for promotion in any way, shape, or form. This is just informational. But as you start working in the nonprofit space, you will hear their name more than once. So it might be good to check them out. Again, you can get a lot of good resources for your nonprofit at a heavy discount from companies like, of course, Microsoft, and like I said, I think Google also has something. You can get stuff from Adobe and VMware and Intuit and Meraki and HP and DocuSign, and you'll just see a whole list of ones. But again, I don't know, maybe I should ask them for a paid for thing on this. But they are another good resource if you are a nonprofit for getting help and information and equipment and software for your nonprofit. So as we look at that, so you go through that process, and they actually help, I believe, like I said, both of them do their approval processes. Then you will be granted, hopefully, the approval process. If not, they'll send back and tell you what they need tweaked before they can approve you. And then once you get that, you'll get a login to start setting up your environment. Couple of good first best practices when you first get into your digital suite, especially if you're going with Office 365 or Google Workspace. A couple of just quick, here's some things to start with. Decide on an email naming standard. My recommendation is first name dot last name at your domain. So we'll use the First Church example. So it'd be Zachariah.Collins at firstchurch.org. Or if I got really creative, first.church, But that first dot last name standard is the standard I recommend, but whatever you do, get one set in place early on. And in my opinion, first name dot last name at domain will give you the largest amount of growth potential when it comes to that without running into duplicate names. Another thing I would recommend, especially for your account, because your account is going to be the super admin account if you're the one setting it up, is enable two-factor authentication. I will link some stuff in the description on how to do that for both platforms, but do some two-factor, as well as start making a password standard for your people to use. So, good recommended practices like, I think Microsoft's right now is technically 12 characters, and in that password have it 12 characters long and have it include one uppercase, one lowercase, and a number and a special character. So have a password with 12 characters long that includes those four, at least one of each of those four categories. But those are a couple of good first practices to kind of get you going. Again, we're going to be covering really building out a digital suite in a different video, but at least this will give you some good information to start with. So hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and we'll see you next time.